I'm Reverend Phil, and I'm your host for Words of the Prophets. Where are our prophets now? Where are those messages God chooses to communicate divine revelation through? In the past, the Creator has sent prophets like Abraham, Siddhartha, Jesus, Muhammad, and many more. Maybe our higher power has switched tactics since we reinterpret God's words as soon as the Creator's prophets leave us. Could it be that Spirit talks to each one of us individually and we haven't learned to listen? On Words of the Prophets, our modern prophets show us how to find the internal prophet that is the I Am, and we discuss the application of spiritual principles in all aspects of our lives. Love and light, everybody. I'm Reverend Phil, and I'm your host for Words of the Prophets. Today, my guest is Unity Santa Fe minister, Reverend Brendan Batchelor. Welcome aboard.
Thanks, Phil. I really enjoyed being here.
Pleasure to have you. And just to let you all know, everybody so far, I think, except for one exception I won't get into, has been with me on radio, and I guess they had a good enough experience. They're willing to come back and do TV with me. So Brendan and I go back a ways, so there's if we seem comfortable with one another, it's because we are. So today's prophetic topic is seeking conscious union with God. And this phrase is extracted from a quote by Charles and Myrtle Fillmore as it appears on the page 17 of the book, Teach Us to Pray. The quote reads as follows: quietly entering the inner chamber within the soul and seeking conscious union with God is the highest form of prayer we know. And that's going to set the tone for what we talk about today. Let's talk about the quote.
Okay.
Is that really the basis of what unity is all about?
Well, prayer certainly is the basis of what unity is all about. And I agree that the highest form of prayer is seeking conscious contact with God, to attune ourselves with that infinite intelligence and wisdom and love that God is. You know, it's sort of along the line of the mystical belief that God does not have what we want. God is what we want. Joel Goldsmith says that. A lot of mystics say that. And that's what prayer, the highest form of prayer.
How does unity distinguish prayer from meditation?
Yes, I mean, meditation, a lot of people say meditation is listening to God and prayer is talking to God. And so I think of prayer as, there are rote, prayers. I hate to call them rote, but a lot of people pray them rotely. Things like the Lord's Prayer, the Prayer of St. Francis, things like that are prayers. There are affirmative prayers, which is unity's type of main form of prayer in terms of praying for others. We don't affirm that God will do this or ask God to do whatever. We affirm that God is doing it right now in the affirmative, in the present moment, that whatever it is happening.
So would it be fair to rephrase that to say God's grace is our birthright? It's always there for us. Our job is to get out of the way and not block it?
Sounds good to me. Absolutely true. I would agree with that.
Okay, so it's always there for us, and what unity teaches is how to become one with it as opposed to interfering with it.
Yes, and trying to, there's a mental science component of unity, and there's a mystical component. And the mental science is when I tell God what it is I want, and I affirm, absolute health and vitality and all of that, which I believe is my birthright. But the mystical would be just to go in and experience the presence of God, not asking or affirming or doing any of that.
And see, I would see that as meditation.
The silence.
Yeah, just to try to touch the void, so to speak.
Yeah, and I think sometimes we meditate on a truth statement in order to take us into the silence. Okay? But the
Like a
silence
mantra.
is the silence. It could be a mantra. It could just be an affirmation of truth. One of my favorite easy affirmations I do quite often is, there is only one presence and one power in the universe and in all of life. God, the omnipotent good. Or I might say, if I have some financial issues that have come up, I might say, you know, God is my source, my consciousness of God is my supply. And I would take that truth into, I would meditate upon it, contemplate it, if you will, to take me into the silence.
How do we, let's try to describe what such a thing as a typical service might be. Somebody's watching this show, they fall in love with what you're saying, and they're going to show up on Sunday. What's going to happen? What are they going to experience?
Well, we just had a visitor yesterday from out of town, and her experience, she came up and told me she was just so inspired because she could feel this love and this zeal and enthusiasm that was just palpable in the church. So I think, first of all, there would be a very welcoming and a very loving energy that people would feel. And then I actually brought our order of service. And so we begin, you know, with a welcoming and opening song, and then we all pray together our prayer for all people. Would you like for me to share that?
Please.
Okay. Surely the presence of the Lord is in this place and in all places and in all people. Knowing and accepting this, we bless people of every race, every color, every creed, and every lifestyle, knowing that there are many paths to God, many names for God, many faces of God, but only one God. And God is expressing through all creation in many, many ways. We come together this morning to experience and express the Christ Spirit that dwells within each of us. So we affirm that together, and then we have some, you know, opportunities that we let people know what's going on. We greet first-timers. We have wonderful special music, a fabulous music director, Brian Bennett. And then we sing Our Thoughts, Our Prayers. Our thoughts are prayers. And we have a time of gratitude where people take a prayer slip and write down everything they're grateful for, and then make prayer requests on the other side. We sing the Lord's Prayer. I or a guest will do a message followed by a meditation. Then we have special music again. And then we have our prosperity blessing and a candle lighting, chanting, and opportunity to give gifts. And sing the prayer, say the prayer for protection, and then we greet each other with holy hugs or handshakes, remembering that this is a universal sign for I don't hug and honoring it.
Yeah. It sounds like you're blending much more Eastern as predominant with some Western. Is that accurate?
Very much so. Charles Fillmore studied all religions, and he was our co-founder. He studied all religions, and we kind of think he gleaned the best from all of them. So that there's really nothing unique about what Unity teaches. It's universal truth principles. It's the perennial philosophy.
Aldous Huxley.
There's some unique things to Unity that we have, our 12 powers based on the 12 disciples and things.
Is there such a thing as a book? Like a Bible, a Quran, a Bhagavad Gita, or a Upanishad, or?
Well, we use the Bible, and we use all of the others. Unity believes that, you know, just like our Prayer for All People says, that, you know, really all paths lead to God. So we don't believe that we have the only truth, the only way. We honor people on whatever path they're on. And so we, in my Sunday messages, like I'm going to be starting a mystical Bible class based on Yogananda, Paramahansa Yogananda's second coming of Christ. I think Yogananda understood Jesus and Christ consciousness better, certainly better than I ever had been exposed to in any of my traditional Christian upbringing. And so we're going to begin that in a few weeks on Sunday mornings.
You just said, let's touch on that. What's your story? How did you become a unity minister from your, what was your traditional upbringing?
I was originally a Free Will Baptist, and then I was nothing for many years of my, during my preteen and teenage years. I became a Missouri Synod Lutheran when I was about 18 or 19. And then when I was in Hawaii, I lived in Hawaii 10 years, and I found, that's where I found unity. And when I went to my first Unity church on the slopes of Diamond Head, I felt like I'd come home. I had never heard some of the things they were saying, but they resonated in my heart as true. And I found a comfort and an uplifting experience that I had never experienced in a church.
Do you remember what any of those things were that you'd ever heard?
That day, I remember hearing that I was good, and I had never heard that in a church. That I was good, inherently good. And I always like to add, regardless of how I'm acting, that part of me, that,
yes.
that Christ spirit, that Buddha nature, that divinity, God within me, is absolute good. Now, whatever my ego may be doing to block it is a whole other matter we can deal with. But my basic true nature is good.
So unity embraces a belief of duality.
We believe there's only one presence and one power in the universe and in all of life, and that presence and power is God, and God is good all the time. But we do know evil happens, and we believe evil happens when we turn away from God, when we forget who we are, and we start acting in ways that are not for the highest good of ourselves or others.
Well, you use the term ego. That's why I asked the question. Mm-hmm. To me, when we start talking about ego, we start talking about duality.
Okay. I think of it as that we're threefold beings, body, mind, and spirit. And I think the ego is of the mind. It's part of who we are, and we couldn't survive on this planet without it. So we don't want to dissolve it. We don't want to destroy the ego, but we want our divine nature to rule, not our human nature, our ego.
Get thee behind me.
Yeah.
Okay.
And he did, and push like hell.
We've been talking about it. Maybe we can just add some stuff for the listening audience. Unity grew out of that period of New Thought, and there was this seemed to be this wonderful outburst of more forward-thinking spirituality in the 1800s.
Right.
You know, so there was Christian Science, there was Unity, United, Baha'i Faith happened at that point. Mm-hmm. I mean, even the Seventh-day Adventist happened at that point. I mean, there was just a lot of, I'm not even trying to get into why that happened, but there was from my understanding, and correct me if I'm wrong, there was just kind of this new look at the old teachings and saying, wait a second, we're not getting the right message.
Yeah, and a new way of thinking. Jesus' Sermon on the Mount in particular is really about a new way of thinking, new thought. And that's different than New Age. People use those terms interchangeably. And I have nothing against New Age. And I think there's aspects of it I like to experience and whatever. But that's not what New Thought is. New Thought is thinking differently, thinking anew, letting go of some of our old beliefs and allowing a new way of seeing things.
Well, one of the things that I'd liked when I'd first gotten exposed to that concept was the idea of Jesus as the way shower. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we say Jesus is the great example, not the great exception. Because if Jesus was the great exception, then what hope is there for me?
Yeah.
What hope is there for you?
Which is that same message that you got from the Baptist, that you're not good.
Right.
Even the concept of original sin.
Right. And I don't like to I don't want to criticize that way of belief. It works for so many people. It's supportive to them, and it helps them to be good. It didn't work for me, and I'm more inspired by being held accountable to my goodness. to be told that I'm good, so I want to live up to that.
Are we really, here's deep thought, are we really being good if something's being held over our head and forcing us to do it?
Well, I don't know, but one of the things we have a challenge in Unity, especially in fundraising, is we don't have a hell, and a literal hell, and we don't do guilt, and we don't do fear. So there isn't. We don't hold things over people. Even everything we teach, we say, take what works for you and leave the rest. We're not interested in trying to force people to believe something. We say, take what we teach here that makes your life better, that makes you closer to God, and use it, and leave the rest.
And I hope that gets a lot of popularity, because I mean, that's what I subscribe to.
Yeah.
We have to have our own experiences. We have to, to just blindly follow anything, to me, is a recipe for, I don't want to say self-destruction, but I mean, I'm not really having an experience if I have blind obedience.
Right.
I'm not learning how to weigh things. I'm learning how to make decisions. And that's the problem I have with some religions. I try to separate the religions from the people practicing it, because I think there are people who are getting that message, or getting a message in spite of the religion, not because of it.
Right. And I think the word experience that you used, that's what it's all about. Charles Fillmore said, the co-founder of Unity, he said, there comes a time when you've got to put the books down. You've got to set aside the tapes or the CDs or the DVDs or all of this stuff, and you got to go to headquarters. You've got to go straight to the presence of God, and that's your authority. And your authority is, in Unity, when we talk about Jesus and Christ, we do not see Christ as Jesus' last name. We know that Jesus became the Christ, but he also said all the things he did, the rest of us could do as well, and even greater things. So I have Christ's potential within me. I may not be there, and I may not be up there on the level of Jesus, but I have it in potential. And so do you, and so does everyone out there. We are the Christ in potential.
So maybe it's a leap, but does Unity believe and teach about karma and reincarnation?
Well, we believe that grace overrides karma. That, we can be in a karmic cycle.
Well, that's an old Casey teaching.
Yeah. So that, but grace, it can all be wiped out in a heartbeat.
But karma, is an existing factor?
There's that aspect of cause and effect.
Okay.
Yeah, that we believe our thoughts are prayers. We believe that we create our world by the beliefs we have. We create our lives. And so certainly there's a cause and effect there. And we do not believe that we're punished for our sins, but rather we're punished by our sins. So that could be thought of as a somewhat karma.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And reincarnation?
Reincarnation is not a teaching of Unity, but a lot of people in Unity, including the Fillmores who founded Unity, did believe. But it's not one of the things they taught as a principle.
Interesting. Mm-hmm. Do you know why? I mean, it's to have a belief and not teach it.
Well, what they taught was that it was a personal decision that everybody has to make in terms of, whether or not that works for you and supports you. I mean, personally, if I kind of think that I might come back, I want to get as far as I can this time around. So I like the idea. But I don't think it's a make or break in terms of principles that make my life better. My life isn't better because I believe in reincarnation. But my life is better if I believe there's one presence and one power in the universe and in my life, and that's God, and that God is there all the time.
Let's get into the 5 principles.
Okay. Well, the first one is that there is only one presence and one power in the universe and in my life, and that presence and power is God, and it's good all the time. So that's the nature of God.
Can you recreate the Fillmore's teachings and studying behind that? Where where did they find that concept? Would they find it in the Bible? Did they find it in what teach?
Yeah. Well, like I said, Charles Fillmore studied all religions, and he gleaned a lot about what they had in common, and that's a very common universal truth. That there's, whether someone, no matter what their religion is, if they have a God, it doesn't matter what they call that God. There's only one God.
I don't want to go there. I was
Okay.
going to take the status. We don't need to do that.
Okay. So the second principle.
Okay.
So the first principle is the nature of God. Second principle is the nature of humankind. And unity believes that we are made in the image and likeness of God, and therefore we are inherently good. And like I said, I always add, regardless of how we're acting, we have that spark of divinity in us.
Let me read the whole thing the way it's just.
Okay.
Because I really like the way this states. Human beings have a spark of divinity within them, the Christ spirit within. Their very essence is of God, and therefore they are also inherently good. Which is just a beautiful statement. It's so simple, and it's so,
right.
Just gets right down to the point. Do people have that same experience that you had, like the first time you walked in when they hear this?
I hear that one statement a lot, is that the people say, I felt like I had come home. That's a very common statement. And also the fact that there's no guilt, there's no, everything is, we support people to be the highest and best they are. We're not about beating people up and telling them how bad they are. They've been doing that themselves long enough.
I know. I was going to say that must be awfully shocking for
Yeah.
some people to come in, just to get that. What was that? The Marianne Williamson statement that Mandela made famous? We're afraid to shine.
Yeah.
I could see people having a hard time with that.
We're not afraid of our magnificence is what we're afraid of.
Yeah,
it
we're
hasn't
afraid
been
to
pointed
shine,
out.
not to be.
Yeah, it hasn't been pointed out to us a lot. How magnificent we are.
Why aren't we hearing it?
Well, I think that in ages past and maybe up to this present day, that a lot of religion has been about keeping people in line, if you will, out of fear and guilt. And that still exists in a lot of spiritual paths, religious paths. And I don't know why. It doesn't make any common sense to me, but it apparently is helpful to a lot of people.
People, I hear that, and it's like, talking about karma and reincarnation. I believe in karma. I believe in, both cause and effect, which is within the now, and karma, which is about what we bring with us from a prior lifetime. And I think one of the places that we get to meet and get a chance to pay that back is in childhood. And I think we are getting progressively dysfunctional because that's the easiest place to lay the foundation for these lessons. And if a child keeps hearing they're not okay, and then all of a sudden they hear that they are okay, it doesn't resonate.
It's mind-boggling. I remember one time someone came to the church, and she came a second time, and then she said to me, okay, so when are you going to start telling me all that stuff that I always hear in church? It's like, when are you going to start laying on the guilt and all that stuff? And I just said, well, it's just not going to happen here. And it's very difficult for so many people to believe who've had an experience of that in their childhood.
Yeah, it's, I've talked about this before, and you're familiar with it. I'm a recovering drug addict. And a lot of what brought me to that place of becoming a drug addict was the dysfunctionality and the messages I was getting as a child. And I relate to what we're just talking about because my mother was the youngest of 4 siblings. And so everybody was always running her life and by default running my life for me. But there was one aunt who married my mother's brother. And she always used to give me, you're okay, Phil, don't worry about it. And I thought she was a loon. Because I was getting the opposite message from, 95% of the family. There was something wrong with me. And here was this one person saying, no, Phil, you're okay. And I couldn't grasp it. I couldn't relate to it. And I thought there must have been something wrong with her for telling me that, And I could see that. I mean, I love the message. We'll get on to the rest of these 5 principles, but I love that message. That's what I try to do with this show is we are God. One of the statements I make at not every show at the end, but I tell people our job is not to let God in, our job is to let God out.
I say that too. I found myself one Sunday saying, that God is knocking on the door of our heart saying, let me in. And all of a sudden I stopped and I said, no, God isn't. God's knocking on the door of our heart saying, let me out.
Exactly.
Let me out. Because I believe we are expressions of God. We are individual expressions of God. And yet there's no individual because we are one. We are so one with God. Yeah.
Exactly, which is very Hinduish.
And to say we are one with God is incorrect. We is one. We is one. That's what Joel Goldsmith says. He's a wonderful mystic.
And it's interesting because one of these days I'm going to get this book written, but the title of the book is God Is.
Yes.
Because I had come across, I think it was Say Baba, there was a quote, and there was a quote by Edgar Cayce. And basically both of them were saying the same thing. Anything after God is redundant.
Right.
To say God is everything is redundant.
Right.
To say God is love is redundant.
Yeah.
And there was a period of time where God is was my mantra.
Yeah.
And
Joel Goldsmith has some great writings about God is. So.
I don't want to read it because it'll influence what I'm going to write.
Yeah, that's true.
But that's after I'm done with the book, maybe I'll go back and read it.
Okay.
But yeah, that's the concept. I mean, that's the message. Yeah. How does...
Do you want me to do the third principle?
No, before you get to the third principle, which is, how does the unity community demonstrate that to the rest of the communities?
Demonstrate that God is?
That we are God and we're here to...
Well, I always encourage everyone to, that when they're out there, and that's going to really be covered in the fifth principle. Okay. Let me get to that, and I think I'll answer your question.
Okay, let's do number 3.
So number 3 is that we believe in in the power of our thinking. That thoughts held in mind produce after their kind. So we're not talking about fleeting thoughts, but we're talking about really thoughts with a lot of energy behind them and beliefs. They express in the world. And I love to use the example of our church. We're on 599, right, real close to mile marker 12. And we're in a building that used to be the La Cuchara Market. And it was built, the La Cuchara Market was built to look like a northern New Mexico church, including inside. And so everybody that drove by there thought it was a church. Everybody held it in mind that it was a church. And so I said it had no choice but to become a church. At some point it had to be a church. And so now it is. And when we have that thought in mind that I'm not good, we act it out in our life. So...
Well, we bring it to us. Yeah. It's a teaching mechanism.
It's like a law of attraction or whatever. But that those thoughts held in mind that we really believe, we'll bring them about. We hear people talk about a self-fulfilling prophecy. That
exactly.
Well, it's the law of mind action.
Let me read this, the actual wording, because again, I love the wording. Human beings create their experience by the activity of their thinking. Mm-hmm. Everything in the manifest realm has its beginnings in thought. Yeah. So...
Although I did have one of our children one time say to me, "What about oil?" I love children. They're such great teachers. It was like, oh, well, But if we believe God created through the Word and all that, then, but I decided to just leave it well enough along. He might ask me another one I couldn't answer.
Little kids should be seen and not heard.
No, he was the same one who said one day we went down to Albuquerque and we took the children to the beach and then to the aquarium. And on the way back, we were all really kind of tired. It had been a long day. And he said, that's the most fun I've ever had at church. And I said, yeah, I think you're right, Justin. It's the most fun I've had at church, too.
This third principle, I'm trying to remember how long ago it was, but do you remember you folks sponsored Dr. Joe?
Right.
Yes.
We're still in communication with Dr. Joe. We hope to bring him back again soon.
Well, let me know. I'd love to get him on TV if he was willing to do it.
Sure.
Because remember we did a radio interview with him. And those of you who don't know, Dr. Joe Dispenza, has a fascinating story. He was one of the individuals. He was the guy on What the Bleep who sat there and said, I get up every morning and I create my day, from the beginning, or something to that effect.
Right.
And, that was all about quantum physics. And he had a fascinating story about his belief and how it was physically manifested in his own healing.
Right.
And then he kind of went out on his own with the book. It was something about mind. And
something to do with the brain and mind.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then he has another book out, I believe.
Uh-huh. Yeah, he's got a great website.
Yeah, so Dr. Joe Dispenza, look him up. He's got a very interesting story. I mean, and I think what that highlights is, so many numerous examples of the ability. We were talking off camera earlier about the healing that the original wife of Charles Fillmore did, about healing from the TB, was it? Or?
Yeah, she had tuberculosis. It was called consumption back in the late 1800s, and she heard a speaker say that we are children of God and we do not inherit disease. And she, all her life, expected to have that disease. It was a belief held in mind. And she really got it. It was like one of those instant downloads. And she got it that as a child of God, she was healthy, whole, and well. And she began not just affirming that, but she felt it. There's a difference between saying affirmations from the head and saying them from the heart. She knew that was true. And in her knowing of that, she spent a lot of time in meditating and before going into the silence, praising her body, thanking it for being strong, healthy, vital, and well, and asking it to forgive her for all the negative things and the way she had condemned it in the past. And over a 2-year period, she was healed. So she was. If it wasn't for Myrtle, there wouldn't be unity. But then, if it wasn't for Charles, her husband, Charles Fillmore, we also wouldn't have unity, because he started researching this because he was fascinated.
The yin and the yang.
Yeah, and she began, teaching this to other people, and they began having healings. He had a withered leg from an accident when he was like 11 years old, and he wore a 4-inch lift. And when he passed away, from this plane, when he died, he was 94 years old, and he had been without a lift for years. He had a slight limp, but his leg literally grew through the practice of the presence of God.
Do you have, I'm trying to remember what you said about what people would experience at your church. Is there a healing ceremony as part of that?
Well, I think that healing, I think we see a lot more mental, emotional healing nowadays than we do the actual physical, but there's actual physical healings going on. And right now, the one that seems to be bringing about the most healing is we're using a DVD based on the book Healing Back Pain from a medical doctor named Dr. Sarno. And people are, because it's about the mind.
Exactly.
And again, and it's not just about back pain. And I could do a whole show on that, but we won't do that. So yeah, there's healings happening, and there's healings happening from people practicing the presence of God.
I want to explore that a little bit with you. I had a discussion with another guest a month and a half or so about the same subject. Spirit is energy. Spirit is a vibration. We're all spirit. In physical form, we vibrate slower. In spiritual form, we vibrate faster.
Right, I agree with that.
So I made up of 3 components in the body: the mental, the emotional, and the physical. The mental is energetic. It's basic electromagnetic impulse. The emotional is biochemical reactions. Both of them are really not that solid.
Right.
So I only have to raise myself a little bit spiritually for the spirit's vibration to counteract those of the physical plane. I'm not even sure. I guess at some point they counteract, at some point they just raise us above it. I'm not sure what combination there is. But when we get to the physical body, the muscle, the bone, which are significantly denser and vibrate slower, it takes more work, more consistent belief to facilitate a change on the physical plane than it does on the mental or emotional plane.
Yeah, except for God, it's all the same. I mean, there are no degrees of difficulty in miracles. That's what it says in A Course in Miracles. And you know, it is just as easy for God to heal cancer as it is for a hangnail, you know? There is no difference in God. And that's when we say, with God, all things are possible.
So it gets really back down to the Eastern, you know, the Upanishads, Buddha, and both of them, you know, that non-dualistic, we are all God, and therefore, you know, we're perfect as we are.
Yeah. Yeah, and I don't like to say I am God, even though I know I'm an expression of God. I'm not the allness that God is. And yet I'm one with that allness that God is. So it's just a little semantics right there. But we have, I believe that, I know that we have access to the allness of God. We have access to that vibration that could totally wipe out any disease, any condition. And the big how-to, the only how-to I know is to seek the presence of God.
Yeah, and to eliminate that doubt, which is number 3. You know, we have to, it's not just the occasional rare thought, it's the persistent thought. To do this and then say, no, it's not going to work. I'm going to do this, it's not going to work. That it's not going to work is going to counteract everything else you're doing, a part of it.
And again, to know it beyond the intellect. You know, in the Middle Eastern sense of the phrase "to know," doesn't mean just intellectually. It means to know it with every cell and atom of our body, our hearts, our souls, our minds. To know it so that nobody can argue it. That we know it, we feel it, and that feeling is the vibration.
Yeah.
And we begin to vibrate with that pure consciousness that God is, that can do the healing work. You know, Jesus didn't heal. Jesus said, "It is not I, but the Father within who does the work." What Jesus did was align himself with the oneness so that there was no distinction, because he was so one with God in those moments. And when people tapped into that energy that he was expressing, they were healed. All they had to do was touch the hem of his garment. In other words, to touch his consciousness.
Which, you know, I had a teacher who, and I won't get into the whole story, but taught about karma, that there were 12 virtues we're here to master. And the first virtue was harmony. And that harmony affects everything it touches. So does disharmony. But harmony is stronger than disharmony. This is what you're saying. It's about, and he chose that concept of harmony because I think he was really talking about that energetic vibration.
Yes. And the BNP. It's like God is vibrating at this level up here, and we're down here in the muck.
Yeah.
You know, there's not a whole lot God can do. God is being God. God is. But we have to lift our consciousness to that level. And we do that so much by being in our heart and focusing on the wonderful attributes of God. You know, love and life and peace and harmony and strength and power. And as we focus on that, we raise our vibrations to that level where we get into the flow of grace that's always there. It's always there.
Exactly. It's about getting out of the way to block it. You just brought up an interesting concept or a thought to me. Does the teachings of unity encompass the chakras?
We use the I can't say that when we say the teachings of unity, you know, Charles Fillmore, one of the beauties of unity is that Charles Fillmore used to say as he wrote all this stuff, I reserve the right to change my mind. And so in some of his writings, you see his consciousness evolve.
Expanding.
Yeah. And so that's why he says, you got to go to headquarters. You got to go to God. That's where you get, you know, the truth. And so we, in our Adventures in Faith program that we have coming up starting the first part of October, I always use the chakras as we go through that 7-week program, which this year is going to be 6, and so we're combining the first and second chakra. But I always like to think of us as we start that program from the base chakra up to Christ consciousness, to Buddha nature, whatever. And so, yeah, we teach about it, but we're not limited to what Charles Fillmore wrote back then.
See, because the reason I brought that up when you talked about the heart is I've had this discussion with people where their belief is because the crown chakra is on the top, it's the most important one. And my belief is the heart is the most important one. Even though it's done on top, it's actually the center.
Yeah.
And it's about, we got to get it in through the heart, then we can raise the energy up to the top.
Right.
But the heart, to me, is the key for where that energy comes in.
And if anyone of you out in the audience have heard anything about heart math, M-A-T-H,
oh, yes.
You know, the intelligence of the heart, there's more like...
Was it 6 times more the neural connectors than there are in the brain? Yes.
And so we frequently, in our Adventures in Faith, we have study groups in individuals' homes, and we always do a pray back for each other. And we do it using heart math, going into the heart. And, you know, when you state what it is that you got from the heart, and we all state it back to you. And it's just incredible. And it's stuff people go, gee, I didn't think that. It was given to me from the heart. Yeah.
Exactly. That's where we connect. I mean, the mind runs the body. The mind, to me, is the mechanical presence. It's perfect for balancing checkbooks, programming my VCR, but it's not the place I want to do interpersonal. The heart is where I need to touch somebody, and they need to touch me.
Exactly.
You know, and that's when I can start to have real relationships, because I start to, that's to me, again, where the divine comes from. If I open my heart and somebody else, then the God within is touching each other. You know, it's not going to happen up here. It's only going to happen down here. That's my belief.
And yet we can't get here without the mind, because we have to have
we have to surrender.
Right. And so it's the marriage of spirit between the heart and mind that when we do that, it makes a difference in our lives.
Yes. So we're going to be running out of time. Let me read number 4. Prayer is creative thinking that heightens the connection with God, connection with God, mind, and therefore brings forth wisdom, healing, prosperity, and everything good.
Yeah, and I think that there's a little conflict between that and what Charles and because, you know, it's talking about thinking. But when you practice the presence of God, I always tell people, I want us to be the first no-thought church in the New Thought movement. Because I want to do is I don't want to go in there with I will, if you ask me for a prayer, I'm going to give you a creative, you know, affirmative prayer from my heart, but that will have words to it. But if I hold you in prayer, I'm just going to give you to God, you know, and I'm just going to know, and I'm going to just go into that silence. Yeah. But prayer is how we make conscious contact with God. I think it's how we remember God. And so if I'm going to go into the silence, I'm going to still start off with some kind of bringing myself into an awareness of the wonders of God. to take me there.
See, for me, the prayer is the stating of my divine intention.
Right. But Joel Goldsmith, who's an incredible mystic, says a prayer is the click when you're in the silence and all of a sudden you feel that, whew, it's done. That's what he calls the prayer.
That's interesting. I
Yeah.
mean, I've felt that in meditation. I don't think I've ever really,
Yeah.
what I consider prayer to have that feeling. It's the meditation where I feel that.
I think most of us, and certainly for me, most generally, I feel that prayer is the spoken. Like, I love the way you said it. Your intention.
Well, one of the things I've come to believe is that my beliefs and my intention create my reality.
Exactly.
Yes.
Law of mind action.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So let's push on to number 5.
Oh, number 5 is my favorite. Go ahead and read it.
Knowing and understanding the laws of life, also called truth, are not enough. A person must also live the truth that he or she knows.
And
Walk your talk.
And I add to that where the rubber meets the road.
Yes.
So we have a sign as you leave our driveway at Unity Santa Fe that says, where the rubber meets the road. And what I say every Sunday is, it's wonderful that we come together on Sunday mornings and during the week, and that we support, nourish, and inspire one another, and we learn these truth principles on a deeper level. But what's really important is that we take it out there and we live it in our everyday life. So if we're not doing that, and that's where I want to catch back up with that one question you asked about how do our members do it, how do our congregants do it, and that's what I say. It's about every day. It's not about just when you come to church on Sunday or during the week to a class. It's about in the midst of all the toil and turmoil in the world, can you remember these principles? And can you surrender, not surrender to the problem, but can you surrender the problem to God?
Yeah. And when you do that, you find out there's really no problem.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's like I say to them, people who know what unity is, if you're out there doing all this negative stuff and you're affirming things that you don't want to happen in your life and all that, they're going to say, I thought you went to unity. What are you talking like that for?
Well, I want to touch on that for a second. Can I actually create by affirming negatively?
Well, I'm certainly not an expert on this. I believe, for example, if you affirm negatively, if you will, that you're a bad person, that you're worthless, useless, or whatever, then you will create experiences in your life that demonstrate that.
So let me restate that. Can I change my reality by saying what I don't want? Don't I have to say what I do want?
I think it's more important to focus on what you want instead of what you don't want. Because, you're almost like, some people say that when you say, I don't want, that the universe doesn't hear the don't. And it just hears what it is you've said. And what's more important than saying it, you can affirm until the cows come home.
If you don't believe
if you don't believe it,
exactly.
if you don't feel it,
it's not going to happen. So believe in intention and belief that it's like, I don't sit there and say, God, I don't want to feel ill. It's God, I want to feel well.
And thank you, God, that I am well.
Exactly.
The very health of you is in my body. So again, it's like people will say they're having a health opportunity, okay, and they say, oh God, please heal me, as if God wouldn't heal them if they didn't ask. Please heal me. I'm blah 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 blah. And thank you, God, that I'm healed. Maybe they're even advanced enough to say, thank you, God, that you are my health. And then they go around with all their energy telling people how sick they are. And so what are they vibrating out there? What has the most energy? And it's that I am sick.
I am.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. And we think that anytime you follow I am with anything negative, you're taking the Lord's name in vain. Because God's name is I am, right?
Yes.
So if you say I am sick, I am poor.
That's what am I aligning myself with?
Yeah. It's saying the God in me.
Yes.
And so you're saying, the God in me is vibrant, healthy, whole, and well. That's what I want to align with. I want to align and vibrate, as you were saying earlier, to overcome any negative vibration and wipe it out.
Wonderful. We're going to start to run down on some time, so I know you've got some announcements about some events coming up at the church you want to put out there, and give out some contact information, phone number, address, website.
Okay, well, let me first of all say that our website is www.unitysantafe.org. www.unitysantafe.org. And we are located off of 599, the Relief Route, at mile marker 12. Our address is 1212 Unity Way. And
if you're coming from the south, when you see the teepee, you know you've got to make the turn.
Right. And the teepee doesn't have a cover on it, though. It's just the
I haven't been up there in a while. Why don't you cover?
Well, it wore out and we haven't replaced it.
Oh, okay.
But we have a bell tower now, and it's pretty visible there on the left if you're coming from like Airport
from
Road.
The south, yeah.
If you're coming from town, though, you don't see it till you're already there.
Past it.
And so you just have to know right there at mile marker 12.
There's a sign, I think, now that says Unity Way.
Right.
Yeah.
Unity Way.
Heading south.
And
okay.
yeah, the transportation department won't let us, our highway department won't let us put an actual sign on 599, except they let us put a portable sign out on Sundays and when we're having events. So we have some current events that are happening is we're going to have a spiritual cinema. We have spiritual cinema once a month, and this month, this Friday, August 21st, at 7 p.m., 2012, Science or Superstition. A lot of people interested in 2012, so that would be a good place to come. We also have this Saturday, I will lead a silent retreat. I call it Being One Together. And we sit in the silence from 9 a.m. To almost 4 p.m. And that doesn't mean you sit the entire time. My Tibetan bell goes off every 20 minutes, and you might want to do a walking meditation. You might want to go take a break. You might want to go outside. But we dedicate it to silence. So whatever you do while you're there, you do in silence that day, and bring your own lunch. We are going to be doing a compassionate communication workshop focused on nonviolent communication on September 13th in the afternoon. That's a Sunday afternoon. And then I'm also going to a silent retreat, a centering prayer retreat up in Estes Park, near Estes Park, Colorado, and inviting people to join me September 13th through the 18th, if anyone's interested in that. And we just have a whole calendar. We always have stuff going on at Unity Santa Fe.
And this can be found on the website.
It's all on the website.
So you want to give them that address again?
www.unitysantafe.org.
How about an email address, a phone number?
Our administrator's email address is admin, ADMIN, at unitysantafe.org, admin at unitysantafe.org, and our phone number is 989-4433, 989-4433. Now, if you'd like to listen to the Daily Word, a lot of people are familiar with Daily Word that don't even attend a Unity church. Either me or my fiance, Doug Bellamy, records that every morning, and that number is 989-3643, 989-3643, and then you have an option of 3 mailboxes. You can hit 1 to find out what time our services are and classes. You can hit 2 to listen to the Daily Word, or 3 to make a prayer request. So again, 989-3643, and Daily Word is mailbox 2. And then finally our service on Sundays at 10:30, and we do a 9 o'clock spiritual enrichment class, which right now is based on Life of Prayer, is one of the books. We're calling it Teach Us to Pray is the book. It's called Life is Prayer. And when that class finishes in a few weeks, we'll be starting Mystical Bible using Paramahansa Yogananda's The Second Coming of Christ.
Wonderful. And if they want to reach you, any of those contact places, they can ask directly for you, and they will eventually...
Absolutely.
Wonderful. Couple of announcements for me, and then we're going to hit you up for a parting thought.
Okay.
I just let you know at the end of the show there'll be credits. There'll be a phone number, email address, and a website. If you have any questions for me, you want to talk about something, feel free to contact me. I am also I do spiritual counseling. I am a state licensed counselor, and I am also a minister, and I combine the two in what I think is a very unique way. I don't believe in the current model. I don't think it works. That's a whole other show one of these days we're going to do. So if you're interested in spiritual counseling, contact me. I work on a donation basis. Be happy to work with you. Next week we're going to be talking about Walking Your Talk. I'm going to have Hank Hughes, who is the executive director of the New Mexico Coalition to End Homelessness, and Anna Carvlin, who works at the St. E's shelter here in town for the homeless, who wrote a book, Dwell at My Door. And we're going to talk about what is homelessness and why does it still exist. So hopefully you'll tune in and you'll get involved, and we could change something that drastically needs to be changed. So, parting thought?
My parting thought would be to know that you are a magnificent child of God, that you have access to the allness of God for your health, your wealth, your well-being, your relationships.
And it's not heresy to tune into that and make it work.
That's right.
In spite of what you may have heard or think you have heard, it's there for you, and that's one of the things that this show is about. And I thank you so much for carrying that message here, because, we've been going on for thousands of years, and I think we're going backwards. And I believe it's because we're not tapping in to that divine spirit within, and it's amazing what happens when you just turn that around, and it's like, I got a couple of minutes here, I'm going to just touch on it for a second, but it's because of that whole concept, and that whole concept to me was, delivered to me through a 12-step program, that I needed spirit to heal, that God and religion were not synonymous, that God could be something other than religion. And it was learning how to make that connection. There's a second step, which some of the things you said were just like so second step-ish and so third step-ish, which was, second step was about coming to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. Third step is about making a decision to turn our will and our life over to the care of God as we understood God. And then the 11th step is about working on that connection through prayer and meditation. But that is so, so important. We got to keep doing this. We can't just, sign a contract, drop it in the drawer, and like you were saying, I'm spiritual. We got to go out there and do this stuff on a daily basis, and then we got to demonstrate it. If I don't demonstrate it, I don't have it. There's a saying in 12-step, we keep what we have by giving it away. And that is the beginning statement. The rest of the statement, as far as I see it, is we enhance what we have by giving it away. I believe that's one of those spiritual laws. So anyway, make a difference. Do something different. Show up Sunday at Brendalin's place. I mean, there isn't a better place in town. I promise you that. Let the God within you guide you. Let the God within you show you what to do and how to do it. And, let God out. Don't have to let God in. You are one with God, however you want to envision that. Do something with it. Don't let it just sit there and, do nothing. So until next week, thank you for tuning in. Love and light. Blessings to you all.
I'm Reverend Phil, and I've been your host for Words of the Prophets. Thank you for tuning in. Please join me again next week, same time, same channel, for more Words of the Prophets.